Hello Stampers! My name is Linda Bedinger and I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator in Denver, Colorado. And this is my buddy Puccini. He helps me in the craft room. And we have a very fun card for you using some of the things that I haven't had a chance to mess with very much. So this is using the Diorama dies and using the dies for Sea Life. It's going to be a thank you card. So let's just get started. Here is my card, and I've used the Sea Life dies, and I used the seahorse, and I used the little fish, and I used the coral. And the paper that I used comes from, this is the Waves of the Ocean 12 by 12 designer series paper. And I used a piece of paper, and then I used my diorama dies. So here are the Sea Life dies, and there's the coral, the little fish, and the seahorse. And in the diorama dies, what I used is I think it's the third largest. Let me just get it out and make sure, because I have to use them to cut in order to show you what I'm doing. Yes, so it was the third largest to cut this panel out of the front. And then for the one on the inside, I think I used this second. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, fifth largest. And yes, that's the one. Okay, so let me show you what else it takes to make this card. I did also use the Seascape, which goes with the Sea Life dies, and I just used the thank you from there. What we need is a Coastal Cabana Card Base, 8.5 by 5.5, scored and folded at 4 1/4. And then we need a piece of this Waves of the Ocean paper. This one's a little bit different than this piece. And this piece is 4 by 5 1/4 and goes on the front of our card. Then we also need a 4 by 5 1/4 white for the inside of the card. And then you need some granny apple, a scrap. You need a scrap of some more of this paper. You need, in this case, I did my fish out of our Shimmer Vellum pale papaya. I have a piece of Daffodil Delight that is just a piece of scrap big enough to cut out your seahorse. And then you need a small scrap of the Coastal Cabana for your sentiment. And all of these pieces come out of pieces that we're going to cut out of here. So I've already cut my seahorse, but I didn't take it out because I wanted to show you, if you've not messed with this one before, that this cuts out. I'm just grabbing my foam platform and my brush to get these pieces out. If you have something like this, I think Stampin' Up! Still sells these. If they don't, then I will put a link. I'm putting together, I get so many questions from everybody about the tools that I use that are when they're not Stampin' Up! Like the dot runner, or like if they're not selling this anymore, is there an alternative? And there definitely is. But this is tied in at a couple places right here. It doesn't cut it completely out. It's still attached to the paper. So you want to cut around those two pieces. Then right here at the back of the tail, you can make a little straight cut to the next place that it cuts, and that releases this fan tail. And then to make the fan tail really look very realistic, there's another piece that doesn't cut away. So I cut that there. So now my cutaway looks like that. Now let me get some more of these little pieces out of the tail. And I've started a piece that will be up on my blog very soon, which will show you, I've become an affiliate of the Amazon, because 90% of the stuff that I get comes from Amazon. And I will be making a page of links of things that I use that Stampin' Up! Doesn't sell, and it'll be on my blog under my favorite crafty things. And so working on that right now, and I should have it done, I would say probably in another week. And then you can go on and look up, and it's links directly to the product wherever I can. Because I'm an affiliate, I get a very small commission when you use that link to purchase those things, and it does help my business, so that would be great. All right, so there's my seahorse, and I've done the same thing. I have pre-cut my coral, and I cut several pieces, and then I also cut several of the fish, and I think I need 3 for the outside and 1 for the inside. And this one still has his eye that needs to be poked out. There we go. The first thing we need to do to make this work is to color some of these pieces, and I'll show you what it is I did. I used a piece of scratch paper, and I used some crumb cake, and I used some Calypso coral. And what I did was I used a dauber with the Calypso coral, and I went around and gave my seahorse some Calypso coral highlights here. And you can see it's very simple. There's nothing fancy about this coloring at all. Now, that might be enough, but he still looked awfully bright to me. So I went in with a little of the crumb cake and another dauber, and I just took down that brightness a bit with the crumb cake and got some of those brown highlights. And if you look at pictures of seahorses, boy, they're all kinds of colors. Some of them are just as bright as that Calypso coral. So I darkened him up, and then I went back with the Calypso coral and added some of those orange highlights back into my seahorse. And you can see it takes the brightness of that Daffodil Delight paper down a bit and makes him look pretty realistic. So that's what I did with that. Now then, these also seemed, you can see I've darkened one here. These seem awfully bright in that granny apple. So I used the green and my evening evergreen, and I used a dauber, and I went along those, and I darkened up some of the pieces so that you would get multiple tones just like you would in nature. And I cut some of the pieces off because this piece felt awfully big to me. And so I cut pieces, and then I can add some or cut off another piece and add it and add some to the inside. And so I just cut 2 or 3 passes of this coral because it cuts quite a large piece. Okay, so first thing we're going to do, now that those things are colored, I'm going to move that out of the way. I'm going to adhere this piece to the front of my card. Okay, so just going to add some seal to the back of this piece. And then for the inside, I'm really only going to add a little bit of this because I'm going to die cut this piece out, and then we're going to use it elsewhere on the card. So the first thing I'm going to do is adhere this to the front of my card. There we go. I think I neglected to mention that you do need an additional piece of Coastal Cabana that is 4 by 5 1/4, and that is to make this recessed piece on here. So what I'm going to do next, I'm going to go off camera and I'm going to use this die to cut out this front panel now that I've attached this. And so I'm going to put a little bit of tape on this and I will be right back. Okay, so this is what we get when we do that die cut. This piece comes out of here and we're going to very carefully take that tape off because we are going to cut another piece from here. Now I'm going to go back and I'm going to take that die from here and I'm going to cut this piece out of here. And so now I've cut my second piece using the diorama dies. Now I'm going to hang on to this piece too, but there's my centerpiece here. Now this piece of Coastal Cabana is 4 by 5 1/4, and what we're going to do is we're going to put dimensionals on the 4 corners of this piece so that it'll be raised from the outside. So I'm going to start by just putting 4 pieces of dimensionals down on my card and centering that on this part of the card so that it'll look good from the inside and it creates a panel for us to sort of build our scene from the outside. And there it is raised and it looks like this piece is raised, and I suppose you could just do that, cut out this piece and then raise it on the panel. But this is the way I did it, and I was pretty happy with the result. Okay, and then I got to use this piece, and what I'm going to do is take this piece off of here, off of this piece of card, remove that piece from here. I'm just going to add some snail to this piece, and you see it tore a little piece off. It doesn't really matter. And I'm going to use this opportunity to get some of that green from down that was down on this end up towards the top and put this piece in the center here so that I see that pretty Coastal Cabana around the outside. Now then, this piece, what we're going to do, and I think I can get that paper off with a gum eraser. Let's just see if I can do that. Yep, I think that's going to work just beautifully. But we're going to use the other side, so it doesn't really matter. But what we're going to do with this is, there's my piece for the inside, 4 by 5 1/4, and I want to have this piece down here in the corner with a little bit of this, and why not just use some of the material that we've already got here, but I'll show you what we do when we get to that. So next, I'm still working on the front of the card. I've got my seahorse that I am going to put on here. I'm going to bring back my scratch paper and I'm going to use a bit of Wink of Stella on my seahorse. Might as well have some sparkles, why not? See if I can get a little bit of that stuff going. And get some sparkles on my seahorse, that way he'll match the fish. And there we go. Now, what I'm going to need to do is figure out where he's going here, so that I will have to use dimensionals on this part and then glue on that edge to stick him down. So I'm going to add my dimensionals. We are ready to go. And this little guy is we're going to use the glue on all of those places. And then I've got my dimensional set in all the places that need to be supported. So there's my seahorse put in place. He's on a little bit higher on this one, so we might end up with their sentiment down here instead of up in the corner. So now I've got my my coral, and I'm just going to add some snail to the back of my coral, and I'm going to stick this underneath here so that it's flat up there, but I'm going to have it come up over the outside of the card here. And I thought on this one, it was kind of down here and it looked a little sparse to me. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to add a little bit of this coral sort of underneath this piece and up here on my my scene. Now then, I've got my little fish to put, and I've got fish going both directions. This die's wonderful. It cuts out fish going both directions so that you end up with a good choice of what it is you want to do. And on this card, since everything's oriented this way, I wanted to have my fish here sort of going that direction. And I put one up here and one down in here. Now I've got one more fish I want to put on, and I'm going to put him right down here going the other direction. There we go. So that's pretty well done. And we've got some bling to add, but we can do that in a second. So let's go back to this piece for the inside. So what we're going to end up doing is putting this piece down right in here, say like that. So I'm going to add some snail across this and put this piece in place right down here. Then we cut this piece out from that larger piece we cut in the front, and I'd like to have some of this down here, maybe like that. So I can cut there and cut here, and then I can trim that up as I need to. It's still got a little bit of that washi tape from holding the piece in place. So the first thing I want to do is trim away the excess of this piece so I know what the corner is I'm working with. And so we're going to just snip that away so that it fits just perfectly into that corner. And now I know I can put my pieces right in here, and I probably need to round this one up a little bit here at the top and stick that on here. And what I want to have this do is fit here and cover that corner so that I get this little piece down here. And so that now works up there, and this one needs to be cut back this way. So I'm going to just snip that away like that and put that into place right down here so that it covers that corner. And I think that's going to work if I just round this edge so it looks like it makes some sense. Just like that. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and add some snail to that, and put that in place so that it covers my corner the way I wanted it to. Now I'm going to go back to this side and trim those edges off again. And there we go. Now I've got a nice piece of coral, and I sure don't want all of that, but this little piece right here, and again I'm just going to sort of around my corners, and this piece I'm going to want right in here. I'm going to go ahead and add some. That piece looks like it wants to come apart, so I'm going to add this piece of coral right in here, and then I'm going to take this little piece of coral and add it right up here, and again trim away any excess. So there we go. Now we've got a little scene there. Maybe need another little piece of coral in there. I'm going to add one more piece here, but I don't want a blunt cut, so I'm just going to cut off a little bit here and round it, and I think that'll make it look a little bit better. So I'm going to add some snail to this piece, and I am going to tuck it, let's see, maybe under this piece, or maybe I don't have to tuck it underneath anything. Just attach it right here. I think that works pretty good. All right, now I have my fish left someplace here. There it is. And I'm just going to add a little bit of snail to the back of my fish and add him right in here. And there we go. That's the decoration for the inside of our card. Now we're just about ready to add some snail to the back of that. Should have used seal. And put this in place in here. Okay. Okay, so the last thing we have is to add the greeting. On this one, I put a for you, and I did that because it was sitting on my desk, so I used it. But this one uses one from the bundle, and that's that thank you right there. And so I've got my thank you mounted on my block here, and I used Pacific Point to do my stamping on a little piece of Coastal Cabana. And this just needs to be a little piece of scrap that's big enough for whatever it is you want on yours. So I'm going to put my thank you right here on this end. And I've got some shadows. I made a mess of that stamping. But that's all right because we're going to fussy cut that piece out. So let's see. Nope, I'm going to have to restamp it. So let me get this mess cleaned up here. In order to do this the way I want, I'm going to have to restamp that and be a little less aggressive on the ink. Have you ever done that? You just forget and smash it into the pad. Okay, so I'm going to put it on this end and put it right down there and put my thank you. You know, I'm still not very happy with that. I'm going to do it one more time, and I'm going to clean up those edges so that isn't on there, and do my stamping right there with a thank you. I think that's going to work just fine. So the first thing I'm going to do is cut up this end and cut down this end. then I am going to cut just a little bit around the words here. There we go. And let me get this ink put away. Any dark ink like this scares me to death. I'll put my fist in it, and then I'll have a mess, and I'll get ink all over everything. And so I'm just going to fussy cut around the words here. And so I've got my thank you. Isn't that a pretty script on that? It's very pretty. And just cut out those words right around here, and then I'm just going to round that corner. And there's my sentiment ready to go. So I'm going to take all of those pieces out, and I'm going to add a little bit of adhesive to the back of my thank you and put it, I thought maybe it might be better off down here, and I think it definitely is. It depends on where you put your seahorse. You can see I put mine up a little bit, so I'm going to take my thank you and I'm going to set it right down here on the bottom of the card. Isn't that pretty? I mean, it's just so simple and understated. The drama is the card, not the sentiment. And then we've got our decorations for the inside. I think it's lovely. Now, we also have part of that same Waves of the Ocean suite are these beautiful rhinestone waves basic jewels. And I used a couple of different of these colors because I thought, how fun is that? I can. So I put one of these darker ones, and I'm going to put it right down here to pick up that darker blue that's in some of the other places. And then I use some of these little bubbles, these little rhinestones, to make bubbles from the fish on a couple of them. And let's see, I used the blue ones on this one. And then I used one of these giant dark blue ones for the eye for my seahorse. Isn't that pretty? And then I dotted some more of these larger stones around on this. Put the blue on the green and the green on the blue, and just have a little bit of fun with all of those colors. And it looks like this guy needs a bubble. I'm going to add one right there. And then add, oh, maybe I'm getting carried away with these things, but I love them. They're so pretty. We've never had these colors, or we haven't had this many of these different colors, and I think it's just great fun. So I'm going to stick some, well, let's see, put one more right in there. Anyway, so there's my bejeweled, oops, his eye didn't stay put. There we go. All right. And so there is my project for today. Thank you so much for stopping by my YouTube channel today. I do so appreciate it. And if you don't already have a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, well, I'd love to be your demonstrator. Or you could join my team. Joining Stampin' Up! Is always a good idea. It's $125 worth of product for $99, and you start out with a 20% discount. And starting right after a quarter starts is a really good strategy, because you always get one full quarter before your first minimum is due. So your first minimum isn't due until the end of September, in this case, when you start after the end of April. Isn't that nice? So you have lots of time to do things. You know, I do think I like this one. I like the composition of this being higher here, adding a little bit more here. Yep, I think it's pretty good. And I like the inside too because it really does match the pieces that I've got here. And I do have to say I like the second one better than the first, but that's almost always the case because I've had time to rethink what it was I was trying to do. And so that's it. Let's see, this is April now, so my April prize draw is a $60 shopping spree on me, and you put yourself in the drawing by placing an order of any size on my store, lbedinger.stampinup.net, and you can get to it through my blog, www.inkandingenuity.com. So again, thanks, and I'll be back soon with more cards, more projects, and more tips. Bye!